and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 261. Today is a feedback session. Anne, Robert and Nurije have all sent in images, so we're going to be giving a little bit of feedback, see how we can improve their photography. So this is Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, and if you are looking to improve your understanding of photography, hopefully you're in the right place. So leave a comment, let me know you're here, and we'll make a start. Yeah, so welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 261. So yes, if you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment, join in the chat, tell me what the weather's doing, tell me what you're up to. All the usual kind of stuff. Today is going to be a feedback session. We've had 3 people send in images, so there's also get a chance while we're looking at them. I'll be offering up my ideas. You can offer yours too. Also leave a comment. If you happen to be watching the recording, then you can leave a comment too. But don't forget, of course, to like, subscribe, do all the usual bits and pieces as well. And invite your friends if you happen to know anyone else you think might be interested. I can see we've got a few people in already, so let's say a quick hello. Oh, Jack joined us, looks like way early. Says, way early. I thought you turned your clocks back. No, we turn our clocks back next week. So that's, yes, so next week in the UK. So episode 262, we will be an hour earlier. Well, I'm not, well, we turn our clocks back. Whether that means an hour further forward or less, I kind of get slightly confused. The main thing is double check local time. If you don't happen to be in the UK, for next Sunday, just Google it, UK versus your local time, and it should tell you. So it will still be from the UK side of it, 3 p.m. on Sunday. Janet says, yeah, UK clocks go back next weekend if I'm correct, which it is, which you are, yes. And Janet says, hi from a warm but rainy Mississauga. Welcome, Janet. Susan says, hi from a wet and miserable day in Kakubri. However, all is not lost as I've got a hot chocolate in my hand. Perfect for a wet Scottish day. Susan's in Kakubri, just 9 miles down the road from here, and yes, it is indeed dreich, wet, horrible, miserable. It's a bit of a shame. There was a producers market over across on Market Hill car park today, and basically they all stopped early and went home because hardly anybody came out to visit them in the rain. Bit of a shame that. John says, hello, good to be back. Welcome back, John. Have been travelling for the last 4 weeks and need to get caught up. Had great weather while on the road, but it is raining here in Columbus, Ohio today. Oh, Jack's joined us and said thanks, always a week ahead. Oh, yeah, Jack also says, good morning, Kim, raining here, but great fall colours. So far it seems to be raining, at least in North America and Canada and and here in the UK. Janet says an hour later next week for North America. Okay, cool. Robert says, howdy all from Texas. Sunny and 58 degrees. Oh, well, sunny down in Texas then. Wet in Ohio and wet up in Canada. Right, so, yeah, need a big global map here just to check the weather, I think. So, quick little update on the Smug Points. So basically, because of the way it's been going, if you commented both last week and the week before live while we were doing this, you will have 10 Smug Points. If you commented just once in last week or the week before, you will have accumulated 5 Smug Points for October. And if you haven't commented at all, then that's 0 Smug Points. Smug Points changed today because Robert and Nurije, who have all sent in the images, each get 25 Smug Points each, and so that will adjust the Smug Points leaderboard. But of course next week we have the leaves challenge, so if you're not totally sure about that, when this is finished, go back and check episode 260 where I talk in depth about the multiple different ways you can photograph leaves and set the challenge for next week. But I'll remind you all about that at the end of the podcast, so stick around for that. Right, okay, well, what should we do then? Let's, so that's Smug Points, that's general starts and introductions. So I think what we need to do, I will click that and click over here and click this, and then what we can do is we'll make a start. So Robert, we're going to start with Robert in Texas. Now, let me just double check here. In fact, actually, I'll tell you what, let me move my board around a little bit and put that over there, that back there. and that back there. And that hopefully allows me to see the screen a little bit better. So if I click that button, hopefully what you should see now is a bunch of dead trees in water. This is Robert's picture. It's in black and white. And Robert says, oh, right, so I need to find that bit as well. So let's drag that over there. Oh, hang on, so we've also got somebody else. Colorado Views Images says hello from a chilly Colorado. Welcome, Colorado Views Images. Do you have another name that we can use, attempt to use? If not, I'm happy to carry on calling you Colorado. Otherwise, leave me a name in the comments here, and I can use that one instead. So back to Robert then, and Robert says this is one I took of dead trees in a man-made lake. Oh, Colorado, it's Marilyn. Oh. Hi Marilyn, you've changed your name, right? Marilyn from Colorado. Right, for a moment I thought we had a new person from Colorado. Okay, welcome Marilyn. Right, so back to this then. So this one from Robert. Robert says, this is one I took of dead trees in a man-made lake. This was supposed to be for the high contrast challenge. That's what we had last month, I think, just coming in a few weeks late. There are several images taken of these and other trees. Many have better compositions, but I would like your help on what I would like your help on is how to create high contrasts and other ideas you might have about this subject. All the lakes in Texas are man-made. All of them? Is that right? Gosh. And this is a typical scene wherever you go. It has the potential to be interesting. However, I just don't see it working the way I would have edited it. Oh, we've got somebody else in here. Lisa Palzer 2511 says hello from Maryland. So hi Lisa, welcome from Maryland. Glad you could join us. So this image then from Robert in Texas. So he's we've got this shot. We've got dead trees in the lake rather, and he was looking to maybe sort of do something like this for high contrast black and white, which is what we were talking about in last month's challenge, but it hasn't quite worked the way he wanted to. Now, wonderfully, as often requested, Robert has in fact sent in the raw file. So if I double click on this, and what we see here is this is Robert's raw file. This is his original photo. And what we can see, we get a better sense of these dead trees sitting in the lake, and they're all just kind of popping up. But it's one of these things where I think we look at the photo and we can see the potential. And I absolutely get Robert was thinking black and white, high contrast. We've got all these shapes. You know, can we do something out of this? If I click this auto on that, what does that do? Yeah, sort of just basically makes the colours a bit richer, isn't really creating too much more contrast as such. I think if we wanted to go, well, I'll tell you what, let's just open it as is. First of all, get a sense of what we've got. And how do we make a picture like this interesting? And, well, I see the potential. I see and understand what you were trying to do here, Robert. But I think where you're kind of running into the problem is, in essence, is the starting point. Kind of, what would I say? I wouldn't start here for the kind of photo that you're wanting to create. And there are a few problems that you've got. First of all, the light is fairly dull or neutral. I can't tell at the moment whether it's a whitened out sky, or, you know, because it's a bright day and this is just a sort of slightly underexposed photo, or whether it was just a dull day and that's a dull overcast. But what happens here is that the water, this sort of bluey grey brownish kind of colour here, is already a bit dark. But on top of that, what we have is we have all the ripples. And the ripples are adding a degree as well. So if we do a very straightforward, if I go to my hue saturation and I desaturate, so we make that into black and white, as you can see, oh, Robert says it was a bright summer day, probably noonish. Okay, point is that there's not a lot of, say, shadow or okay, let's go back there. Right, and then if I say go to brightness contrast, which is kind of where we would probably start with something like that, I can brighten it up, and I can brighten it up, and then maybe I can give a bit of contrast. But now it actually looks more like they're sticking out of the sand than it does sticking out of water. Part of the problem here is because the water is rippled, it's not smooth, there's no reflections to necessarily tell us that it's water, particularly once we go into black and white, and particularly once we start playing with the contrast. So we can kind of zoom in and we can get this kind of feeling here. And I think by and large it tends to work better if you're more zoomed in. If we go back to your original photo here, now the way you've edited this, the contrast is actually showing up the water ripples much more, but we're not getting that real stronger black and white feel, which is what you kind of were after with the high contrast. We've got a lot of these mid-tone greys, and it's busy. It's a busy background. And the beauty of these shapes, you're kind of wanting them to stand out in their own right. So I think really I'll tell you what I'll do, Robert, here, I think, is I'm going to show you a couple of other photos that I've done, that not from the same place, but just to kind of give you an idea as such. Oh, Nadia's joined us from a very wet Fife. Welcome, Nadia. Glad you could make it. So I think when you're trying to create that notion of something sticking out of a lake, you're looking for ideally reflections and a smooth water. So and it's the difference between whether you're hunting the photo, whether you've decided this is the kind of photo I want to get. So I'm going to wait for the right lighting conditions, I'm going to wait for the right weather conditions, and then I'm going to go out to this spot like this and really create that spectacular photo that I have in my head. Or you're scavenging, as in you happen to be there, you see an option, you see something and you go, oh, that's quite good, what can I get out of it? And by the look of it, that's where you were with this particular photo. But the problem is with that kind of scavenging is that you have to make the most of what's there, and quite often what's there isn't a good starting point for what you've got in your head. So let me give you an example here. Now, in the loch down at the bottom of the town here, Carling Walk Loch, there's okay, let's flip over to here. Here you can see what we've got is on a foggy day, we've got a fallen over tree and the fairly still water, okay? And although there are a few sort of ripples over there, there's not a lot, to be honest. And over in this corner, it's really quite still. And what we're getting is we're getting these wonderful, wonderful reflections, okay? And that stillness and those reflections. Now imagine that back with your photo. If you had the whole lake like that with all these trees sticking up on still water with the reflections underneath. And the other thing here is this idea of, we've also got this on a misty day. Let me show you another version of this photo, which I can't remember whether it was taken on the same day or possibly. Yes, it would have. So we see these little twigs here over on the right. What I then did was I zoomed in on them. Now this one, is it converted to black and white? No, it's not quite converted to black and white. It's just because it's so dull, all the colour's been sucked out of it. And now we're creating this sort of slightly more minimalist idea. We're isolating just this little bit. There's a little bit in the background here, which is still giving you that sense that it's a lake. And you can see other trees popping up out of the horizon, little bits of reflection. But this bit here then becomes the kind of key area to it. And then if I want to remove the top of this, I can do something like that, where here I just tilted the camera down a little bit more so that the horizon didn't come into it. And now it becomes a very abstract piece. It's still reflected in the water. We know that this is twigs reflected in the water, but by removing all the other aspects, even like the horizon line, and if you drop this in black and white and then play with the contrast just a little bit more, you really would have the this would be a good start for a high contrast black and white kind of photo. So that's one of the ways you can go about it. Another option is, oh, Meg's joined us, says hello everyone, sorry I'm late, I'm glad you made it along, Meg. So again, this here is frozen. Now I know you don't tend to get quite so many frozen lake opportunities in Texas. However, some of the photos you've shown me show that it's not impossible. You know, I have seen your photos of the sort of the big unexpected snowscapes in Texas. So depending on where it is, if you happen to have frozen lake, you're going to get a similar kind of idea, where then you've got, like over here, we can now see these twigs sticking up and bits of reflections in the ice as well. Now here we've also got other things on the ice which people have thrown, like cans and bits of stones and other bits of broken ice for that matter. But that's another way of kind of, so what the point is that you're ending up with smooth water, and whether it's water or whether it's ice, and certainly if you've got that fog, then it's smooth. Your other option then, what do you do if it does happen to be slightly choppy, there's a little bit of a breeze, is the notion of, is about the light. You don't want to have a noon light. Could you get there at a different time of day? Could you be there either early in the morning or late in the afternoon, evening, so you get low light? And if we have something like this, so here we do have the choppier water, you know, there's a breeze going on, but we've got the light behind it, and this light is creating the much more interesting kind of reflections and shapes and contrasts within on top of the water. Okay, now imagine something like this at sunset or at sunrise, with colours in the sky also bouncing off the water. But there's a key aspect to this and this one that I want to talk about as well, which is, if we notice, some of the tree is breaking the horizon. Okay, so we've got down low for this shot, got down low so that you've got something breaking the horizon. Now, if we go back to your original photo, or your version of the photo here, okay, let's just take the brightness up. Is what's happening is you're not breaking the top of the trees here, the background. You're just about coming across above the top of the lake with it, but you're not getting up into the sky. So essentially the top part of these trees just disappears into that kind of busy background. If you were lower down, then actually the tops of the trees will break above that. And I think that then allows you to create more interesting shapes. Now, the other alternative is to get above it. You know, like with this, we've actually got the entire piece that we're looking at is below the horizon line. So you either need to kind of have your subject below the horizon line or comfortably cutting through the top of the horizon line. The worst bit is when it doesn't quite make it, when it's lined up exactly with the horizon line, or it's not, you know, or in this case, or in your case, it's sort of lined up with the trees at the back. You're kind of in that in-between world, which is not satisfying on either side. So ultimately then, Robert, I think the main thing when we go back to your picture is you need a different set of conditions to try and achieve what you wanted. So I can absolutely see how you start off with this photo, or you're standing there, you know, at the edge of the lake, and you can see all the dead trees popping up, and you think, wow. And because you can kind of move from side to side, you're very aware of how they are just sort of almost silhouetted against the water. But your brain is filtering it. Your brain is already deciding how it would look. And so you're receiving it in a way that is different to the camera. And the camera isn't making as much contrast. The camera isn't seeing it the way you are. The camera isn't moving about. As such, you've got to kind of start giving yourself many more options. So with something like this, I really would, you know, at the very least, squat down low, okay, get down to near water level and try taking photos from there. And I think you would get some interesting things breaking above the horizon. The difficult thing with this to get above is because you're talking about a whole lakeful, you probably be having to stand on a ladder or even have a small kind of cherry picker or crane or something to get up to the height, to be looking it down to make sure that everything's actually below the horizon. But to be honest, what you kind of probably envisaged in your head, as opposed to what the reality was, is where the water is smooth, whether it's ice or whether it's just a very calm day. And then either you want to have the fog, the mist, which is then sort of smoothing out all the background and really making those trees stand out. Or you're after something which is going to make the water more interesting. So backlight is probably what you really want, rather than the noon coming down from the top. You want the light behind it and the reflections. And if you could get colour in the sky while you were doing it, at that point I think you'll probably really have the photo that you probably were kind of half hoping to get when you're standing there. Robert says, I took the photo from a bridge that crosses the lake. I could scout for better locations and definitely go at different times, like golden hours. Excellent. Well, I definitely think that's kind of the way to go with that. So I hope that all helps, Robert. Thank you very much for sending that image in. I think it's one of those really interesting ones that I can look at the photo and go, I know if I was there, how I would be looking at it. And I can understand what you were hoping to get. But then when the conditions aren't there, you know, you've either got to make the decision to say, well, okay, I'll come back when the conditions are right, or I have to approach it in a slightly different way. And I think with something like this, if you were really going to, you know, what you would need to do really is isolate a bit, you know, to like take something like this and just, you find an interesting shape and zoom in on it, because the landscape as a whole isn't quite going to give you it in the way that to get the really good landscape photo, you need to then have the light and everything that goes with it. So yes, thank you very much for sending that one in, Robert. Much appreciated. And yes, hope you found that useful. Right. Okay. Next then, I'm going to move on to Nurije. And okay, so Robert says, I appreciate your help. It's always difficult to figure out what I'm seeing and why I can't capture it. Your perspective is helpful and valuable. Excellent. Glad to be of help, Robert. Okay, next up then we go to Nurije. And if I can find Nurije's photo and flip over to that. And Nurije says, I'm sending this one in for feedback. Please, not sure about the cropping. Is it too dark? And also, is that bird distracting or should I keep it? All I've done is play with the colours a tiny bit and do a tiny bit of cropping, and looking forward to the autumn challenge next week. I'm at work today, but I will tune in later. Okay, excellent. So what we have here then is we have a scene of a town. I don't know if she doesn't mention which one, but we've got the river, we've got a bridge, we've got a weir, we've got what's this say, mill on the Ex. Oh, so okay, it's on the River Ex, so it's going to be somewhere near Exeter or Exmouth, down in Devon. Yeah, down in Devon, southwest England, sorry. There's a spire poking above the treetops there. We've got some chimneys, some rooftops over there as well, and then we've got the reflections in the water. So again, this is one of those things where you're standing there, you see the scene, you think this is a lovely scene, you kind of like this, let's take a photo. But again, the lighting is dull, the weather's dull, what can we do with it? So again, Nurije sent in her raw file, well, not a raw file, just it was a JPEG, but unedited version. So this is her unedited version, and we can see it's much duller. So she's cropped it a little bit, brightened everything up a bit. Oh, sorry. And there we go. So it's lifted it a bit, but is it really still kind of creating, you know, more of the photo? What else could you do with this? And I think it is tricky because a little bit like Robert's photo, there's a level whereby the conditions you're starting with, and the conditions you're starting with are a dull overcast day where most of the colour has kind of been desaturated. You don't have a nice bit of sunlight glinting off the autumn leaves, or colour in the sky which is reflecting in the water, or even an interesting boat on the water in a certain place. You've got an out of focus bird flying past, which maybe does add a little bit of interest. Is it necessarily in the right spot? It's a kind of tricky one. Oh, we've got somebody else here. So, Dovarkin 6551. Hello, Dovarkin. Not quite entirely sure how to pronounce that, or if you have another name you would like us to use, then let us know, but welcome. So Nurije's picture then. What other options have we got with this? Well, okay, let's just open this one in Photoshop for the moment. Okay, let's just close Roberts there and start thinking about, first of all, there's a notion of what do we crop? What's the story? What's going to be the interesting story? And there's a number of different stories here, to be honest, or potential. And, you know, so there is over here, we've got a building, we've got chairs sitting there, we've got a little bit of, you know, down by the river. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Come over here, we've got the weir. Looks like some kind of concrete block across the weir as well. So it looks like there's various kind of interesting bits. We've got a bridge over here. It looks like there's a seagull or some pigeon or something sitting on there. Oh, we've got some swans down here. There are various aspects, but none of these aspects are leaping out. They're all kind of merging into the one. I think there's also, I mean, for that matter, I quite like these shapes, you know, the shape of the spire and the sort of echo in the trees and echo in the chimneys on the rooftops over here. And actually at this point, if we took your seagull and placed it, let's say I take that, copy that, and then paste it over here, and then I suppose if I probably do darken, something like that, mask it, and just take out a little bit of the dark bit, something like that. Then actually, if you look at that, we could move it around a little bit. Maybe shrink it down a little bit if you were zoomed in this far. Do that. Something like that. And you see, you can start to create a little bit of a picture like this in itself. There's interesting shapes just on its own, just this idea of the steeple. But a little bit depends on the camera you've got, the quality of your zoom, how far in you can go. Doberkin says, it's all good, you pronounce it perfectly. Oh, great. That's a relief. Okay, I'll stick with that one for the moment. So there's options there whereby I think there are sort of pictures within pictures with this one. I think the difficulty is this notion of what you can do with the whole picture, because ideally you would want it taken on a better day, I think. And so if we were to take, John says, I see several pictures in this one scene. Yeah, and I think that's the point. Yeah, I think you're right there, John. There's different bits you could isolate and create photos out of, but how do you create a photo out of the whole scene? Now, in terms of cropping, yeah, I think certainly over on the left-hand side, because of the bridge strut here, the main kind of bit that's up there, that you don't want that you can't be, you either have it properly into the shot or you have it out of the shot, so you would crop that bit off. Then I think if you are wanting to make the most of the fact that you've got the reflection in the water, then you want the tip of the spire reflected down here needs to be basically about the same distance from the top. So in that case we will pull the top down here like that. And as a crop, that's probably a better crop. Now, the problem that we've got here is the stray seagull is then sitting there. And if I look back at your original, you cropped it to keep the seagull in. But I think at this point, just remove the seagull. At that point, or, you know, stick it in somewhere else. If you're using something like that, but maybe so somewhere around here or something, just to kind of echo the spire, and maybe just where you've got the curve of the trees here, giving it almost something to nestle in. You say just a quick little sort of side point. If you look at this, the bird here, it sits better in composition if you've got it there than if you've, say, got it just sitting at the top of the trees where it's kind of coming up too much. It gives you a little bit more space around it to have it somewhere like that. So if you were to play around with it, then I would do something like that. What's that? Oh, Lisa says, too bad the cars are there. Yeah, I mean, well, it depends. I mean, I will say the red car does tend to grab the attention a bit. And that is one of those things where we've talked before about this notion of red is one of those colours that the eye tends to instantly get drawn to. So if you wanted to reduce that, what you could do is you could go to the hue saturation, select the red. If we really wanted to, we could use a little colour dropper here and make sure we specifically select the red of that car, and then we could desaturate it. Okay, so you're just dragging it down so that that red car just becomes a grey car, something like that. Now, we don't necessarily want that to happen across the whole picture, so because I can see I've already lost the red of the life belt there. So if I turn that to black, fill the mask, and then I can just use the brush, turn that back to white, and just paint that effect in. So it's only affecting that car there. It's not affecting anything else. So now that's taken that idea, and it's at least got rid of the red car grabbing our attention. Other cars, you might, if you really want to go in and Photoshop them out, you could. Now, what I will do is I will select all of that and paste that onto a new layer. So now what can we do with the actual the sky? So if I'll go into Camera Raw. If I click Auto, yeah, well, that's lifted up the colours a little bit. It's giving us a little bit more texture in the sky, helping a bit. Still feels a little bit dark, and I kind of want to bring up, maybe if I bring those shadows up more, that really brings out more colour and more of what's going on in here, which is what I think. The auto settings on Photoshop is taking into account that there's a big bright patch of sky and reflection, and so it tends to sort of compensate by darkening things down a little bit. So we can probably nudge the exposure up a little bit, bring those shadows up, and really bring out a little bit more colour. Now, what we could also do at this point, if you wanted, the old vignette, just drag a little bit in the corners, helps draw your attention more back into the centre of the photo. And then if we went to the clarity slider on the effects, that just kind of creates a little bit more contrast, makes everything pop a touch more. And then if you really wanted, well, it's got the vibrance here. Obviously you don't want to overdo it, something like that, but it's interesting when it does. Now, it kills the colour if I do it too much here, but what it does become interesting here is there's when you've got a little bit of colour in the water. So I'll tell you what we could also do with something like this. So we've got a photo like this, and really what's kind of making it a bit more dull is the notion of the fact that the sky is fairly dull, and we could do with a little bit more texture. Now, there's not a lot we can do with the existing sky. We could maybe separate it and play with the contrast a little bit more, get a little bit more out of it. Or if you really want to play around with something, you could add in another bit of sky. So if I say bring in random bit of sky. Now, what I'm not wanting to do is have a sunset sky completely, because if okay, tell you what, let's just show you. Let's copy that, paste it into here, shrink it back down to size, and what we're going to do is put a bit somewhere over. So I'll take the opacity down. What I want to do is, what I'm really after is a little bit of texture up in the sky. But if I was to, let's say I place that there for the moment, put that to 100%. And what I'm going to do, if I go to here and do select sky, and so it's now selected the sky, then I come back to here and I mask like that. You can see it just looks awful, right? It looks so false, so utterly stuck on. All the colours in the foreground are completely wrong for the kind of sky that's going on in the background. So you kind of want to avoid doing that. However, there are other options and ways you can play with this. So first of all, if I reduce that a little bit, but what I'm really after is the texture in the sky. So I'm going to change the way the layer interacts with other ones. And if I go to here, and so you've got darken, multiply, colour burn, that starts to become a little bit more interesting. What else have we got? Soft light overlay. See, even something like an overlay, and just reduce it a fraction. Or what we might even do is, I'm going to create a hue saturation This little here is going to clip it so that I'm only adjusting the bottom bit. I'm going to take the saturation down because I don't want to have a lot of color in it. And then I can actually increase the opacity of that. Now, what I've probably done here is not quite got that sky in the right place. So I'm going to, now, if I try and drag the whole lot up, it's sort of, can I drag the picture without? No. So just for a moment, I'm going to do replace a mask down there. I'm going to move this sky up a little bit, something like that, and then put the mask back on this one. Take the hue saturation, something like that at any rate. And I now think when you've got even just like a, no, didn't quite do that right. We just drag that up a little bit more. Yeah, something like that actually, I think, rather than that hard line going through there. And then I can stick the mask back on. And so there's almost like a tiny hint of colour, but not a lot there. But that little, just that little bit of extra texture, I think really just sort of helps lift. And then you can play around with how much of the saturation you want or not. But that kind of overlay just adds a little bit of extra texture into it, something like that. Then what you could also do, for that matter, is if I, now would this work? If I duplicate that layer and then invert it, image, no, edit, transform, flip vertical. Has it done it? No, it's flipped the image, but it hasn't flipped the mask. What I'm really trying to do here is I want to have a sense of, yeah, something like that. But again, on this, we would take it down considerably, just so that you've got just a little bit of reflection in the water as well. So you're kind of using that colour bit of reflection, and got a little bit in the sky here. And again, we can kind of desaturate a little bit more. Something like that, I think, is really lifting the landscape out. Okay, so by drawing up the colour out of the shadows, we're getting more here. We're adding a bit of texture to the sky. We maybe shifted that little bird around the place, and ultimately we're kind of there. I think in an ideal world, a little bit like we said with Robert, something like this would benefit from being in a better light in the first place. So if you were there on a sunnier day, or you know, more kind of golden hour or late afternoon, early morning, something like that, where the light is going to be different, that's really going to absolutely make something, a picture like this, pop. Other than that, like I say, the other thing to do is maybe to try and pick out the sort of individual stories within it. You know, I look for something that's going on with the swans, or look for something which is going on with the trees and the rooftops, or, you know, maybe if something interesting, I mean, over here, there's people walking along over by the building, and there's something actually where here you've got slightly more of an urban scene with the on the riverfront. So there are stories, as Jack said, John said rather, there's stories within stories in this, and I think the potential is there. But hopefully then that gives you some ideas there, Nurije. But yeah, thank you very much for sending that image in. I get kind of lots of different ways to play with it. Okay, a couple more comments here. Oh, VG's joined us from India. Welcome, VG. Says, good evening, everyone. Oh, it's Diwali tomorrow, hence the delay in joining. Oh, well, happy Diwali for tomorrow. Excellent stuff. Oh, Susan says also happy Diwali, VG. Lisa says, I'm learning so much how to rescue my dull past landscapes photos. Hope I excellent. That's great, Lisa. Well, keep turning up, keep coming back. There's plenty here. And send in your own images for feedback if you wish. In fact, actually, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's just, if you want to send in images for feedback, critique, or if you want to join in the challenge for next week, which is sending in the Leaves challenge, a number of different ways you can do that. One is my web, my kimayres.co.uk. So if you email me, kim@kimayres.co.uk, make sure you've got the the R and the E the right way round, is the most common mistake, then you can send me the image directly. If you're on Facebook, we have Facebook group, Facebook.com/groups/UPwKA, UPwKA, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. You can place your image in there, join the group, stick your image in. And with any of your image, if you're sending it for critique or feedback, let me know what your sticking point is. Send me the photo, tell me why it's sort of causing you a bit of angst, and I will do my best to help. We also have a Flickr group, also likewise groups/UPwKA. Set it up. I was hoping it would get used more. To be honest, it doesn't tend to get used that much, but it is still a place where you can stick images, but you can also start discussions, get conversations going, is the idea behind that. Meanwhile, for anybody else who's interested in finding these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you'd like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. And also, don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell, and of course, like the video as well. If it always helps the algorithms if you can hit the like. And like I say, if you're not watching live, you leave a comment in the general kind of YouTube chat or anything like that, and that always helps too. Meg saying hi to VG. VG's okay. Little bits of chat going on back and forth. Jack's saying great show. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, yeah, so VG's now chatting to Meg about the Halloween photo she saw on Facebook. Okay, Devorikin says, thank you very much. I will definitely check it out. Excellent. Right, okay, so one more image for feedback, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the challenge for next week and what else is happening. So next up then, we are going to Anne. And Anne in Texas sent me, not that one, this one, sent me this image. Now, unfortunately, Anne didn't tell me a lot about this photo. Well, she said my photo was taken at the Alexandria Library in Egypt last February. But unfortunately, she didn't tell me what kind of feedback she was looking for. So it's in black and white. She sent it in the same time as Robert, who was talking about the high contrast black and white. So I'm wondering whether that's the idea, or whether you're just looking for other ways you can play around with black and white conversion and what you might have done with it. Now, Anne sent in also the, where are we? She likewise sent in the original photo. So this is her original photo taken in colour. And what we can see with this, I mean, there's some blue and green lights up there, but overall they're not adding a huge amount to the picture. We're inside, we've got this kind of, the colours aren't rich and vibrant and standing out so much, so the conversion to black and white seems like quite a good idea to do. However, this particular conversion to black and white feels slightly lackluster. It doesn't feel like it's really making everything go boom in the way that it might. If we look back at the original, and again, it's one of those things where I understand. So you're in the library, it's this incredible space, and you've got all these shapes. We've got these wonderful columns coming up, and we've got these wonderful sort of triangle shapes coming down. Got all these edges and points. Anne has joined us for that and says cropping for impact and black and white conversion for impact. Okay, so that's great. That helps. So yes, so we're there. We've got all these wonderful shapes. The lighting isn't great. The colours aren't great. So yes, black and white conversion seems the obvious way to go, which is where you've started. So I think what we'll do is if we open this in Photoshop again and see what we can do. So here in the raw file, now if I click auto, it makes it brighter and slightly more colourful. But again, the colours aren't, really an overly interesting. What's interesting about this photo is the shape rather than the colour, and as such the colour kind of detracts from the shape. So if I click black and white, it turns it to black and white, but it makes it relatively flat. If I click auto, that brightens everything up, but doesn't necessarily give us the contrasts we want. So I'll tell you what, let's take off the black and white and let's take off the auto for the moment and just go with this, because let's just open it initially. And because let me close those ones there. And so this is the photo we've got. First of all, let's think about the crop then. Now, there's a couple of different ways. Now, this crop, we've got this little bit of balcony at the bottom, which I don't think is overly adding anything. And then likewise, there's something just kind of pulling down at the top. So I'd be tempted to just kind of nip it in a little bit by just kind of pulling that bit down, pulling that bit up. And I think you're already onto something. Now, the next thing, in fact, actually, this feels kind of heavily balanced at the top. I would be kind of more prepared wanting to pull that down a little bit. Now, the next thing we're kind of up against is we've got the perspective thing of looking up. And now you might want to keep that because that gives us that sense of height. Or the question is, do we straighten it out a bit? So if I was to duplicate that layer, Control T, and if I was to sort of take this and pull this out this way, and take this and pull this out way, and that essentially starts straightening the columns out, then that's another option that we have. The thing is because there's a lot there, then we've really got to pull quite a lot and straighten, and then we end up also losing some of the height. Not that, if I hold down the hold down the shift button, and then I can just drag that up a bit and put it back slightly more into perspective. I can so something like that potentially is another way of playing with the lines. So in this case, now what we've done is we've allowed the verticals to be much stronger by doing that. But if we don't want to go that, we can play around with that notion of actually allowing those verticals to be diagonal. We'll just stick with this for the moment. Whether you want to straighten it up or not is kind of one of those personal taste things. But let's talk about the black and white conversion for a moment, because to go back to this idea that there's a number of different ways to go black and white. And the quickest and simplest way is we desaturate. But when we desaturate, it feels relatively dull. It doesn't feel like there's a lot going on. Another way of doing it is the gradient map. And if we have the gradient map set to black and white, well, this is white to black here, so I'll just click reverse. We have a few different options. This smooth has made the blacks very black. Perceptual, that makes it even darker. Linear kind of inverts it, makes it much brighter. Classic is kind of what Photoshop used to do when it only had one option. Smooth, stripes, no idea really never figured out what stripes does. But so that's another option. Another option again is to use the channels. And sorry, I need to be back on that. And on the channels, we go the red channel, green channel, blue channel. We notice how much that changes, and the red and the green tend to be dark. Sorry, the green and the blue tend to be darker. The red tends to be lighter, and that's because of the orangishness in the image. So the red channel tends to be where most of the light is, so it tends to be brighter. But you could pick any of those to start with. But let's tell you what, let's go back. What we can do, now we understand that notion that you can sort of split the colours out. If I go into camera raw and we go back to black and white, which just gives it a fairly dull neutral black and white, there's a black and white mixer down here. And what we find is if I slide the reds, that's not making any difference. If I slide the oranges, that's making a huge difference. All the colour is in the orange. So if we want to actually add a bit more contrast, if we take this orange slider, pull it over to the left or move it up to the right, there's a lot going on there. So what we might want to do is just kind of pull that orange down. Well, actually, I'll tell you what, leave that orange for the moment. The yellow also has an effect, but it makes it very patchy when you bring it down dark. So it's better for making brighter in the highlights, whereas you could pull the oranges down in the dark, something like that. But then what we could also do, there's the contrast button. That always makes a little bit of difference. But I think the other one that I'm really thinking of here is your clarity tool. Now, the clarity slider, it then really starts to bring out the texture here. Do you see just how much that difference that makes? If we sort of zoom in a little bit to something like this, it's just really bringing out that texture. So back to the light, the contrast. So I think if we're playing around with it, ultimately you're playing around with the contrast button up here. you're playing around with the clarity slider here. And then in the black and white mixer, it's the orange that you're wanting to, if you're wanting to darken it to create the darker contrasts, and the yellows if you're wanting to kind of brighten up the highlights. And really where you decide to sort of stop with the left and the right is one of those personal aesthetic choices for where you're at. But I think generally speaking, if we look at that as opposed to, let's say we go to hue saturation, that which was kind of an original black and white, we shift from that to that. It shows you just how much difference it makes if you start playing around with your contrast and your kind of black and white color slider as such. And then I think specifically with something as with this, where you've got these kind of incredible strong lines, I think that clarity slider really makes a difference. So hopefully then that helps, makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, really interesting photo and a lot of fun. I can, yes, and just imagine sort of standing there in the great library in Alexandria in Egypt, and it would just be wow. So yeah, and then it is, how do you make the most of it? I think you're definitely on the right track going black and white. It's then a case for how to maximize and to think about those different ways of converting, and then what you can do with that conversion as well. Oh, Anne says good tips, thank you, excellent. Right, okay, so where are we at? I think that pretty much that covers what we wanted to. So the main thing then next week then is our leaves challenge. Okay, so last week, episode 260, we talked about the notion, different ways you can photograph leaves. They grow on trees. They're all over the place. And if you are in the northern hemisphere and a more temperate climate where you get the autumn and fall changes, it's masses of opportunities. You can look at colour, you can look at shape, you can look at decay levels, you can look at individual leaves, you can look at the leaves on a branch, you can look at the whole tree, you can look at entire landscapes that are under change. But even if you're in like VG in a slightly more tropical kind of climate, the leaves still exist on all the trees and the plants. There's options of getting into macro, there's options of dead leaves, or if you'd like Susan and you love doing the kind of still life, gathering up some dead leaves, or and placing around, or even a mix of light and dark, doing color spreads. Options are infinite. So what we would like you to do then is to really have a think about, if you haven't already done so, go out and find some leaves, find some interesting ways of photographing leaves, and then enter the leaf challenge next week. So like I say, to get your photo, either email it to me, kim@kimayres.co.uk, so just one photo per person, or put it in the Facebook group or the Flickr group, and tell us a little bit about the story. What is it that drew you to the leaf? Because it's not just about the photo, it's about why you created the photo. I think there's always a fascinating thing to share. And then if everybody sends in their images, next week I will go through the images, we'll look at them, we'll enjoy, see what people have done, and hopefully become inspired for other ideas of ways that we could approach this topic. I will then dish out some extra smug points. You'll get an automatic 10 smug points for any image you stick in, 5 smug points if you turn up and leave a comment, say hello, and then I'll also offer out my little bit of fun, my personal favourite top 3, and what we've just recently started introducing as well is the crowd favourite as well, so you get a chance to vote on which one you like the best as well. So where are we? Janet says, I was trying for fall colours leaves yesterday, but I don't think I got any good images for the challenge. Got a couple more ideas to try, or otherwise might have to use an archive image. Well, yeah, if you have to raid the archives, then raid the archives. But there are lots of opportunities. I mean, we're even talking leaf in a puddle was another one. Looking out there, there's plenty of leaves in puddles out the window at the moment. It's just raining and raining, and there's water running down the street, and there's a few leaves floating past as well. So yeah, depending, and of course, black and white options if you really want to make the most of textures as well. So I think that's pretty much about it. Thank you very much once again to Nurije, to Anne and to Robert for sending in their images. I hope you all found that interesting and can start thinking about how you might apply it yourself. I will be having another feedback session next month, so make sure you send me your images for that if you would like feedback. Lisa says, thank you so much. See you next week. Excellent. Delighted you could join us. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all next week. And get your photos in for the ideally for Friday, because I need a couple of days to put all these podcasts together. And don't forget the clocks go back here in the UK next week. Saturday night, Sunday morning. In fact, actually, Saturday's my birthday. Yay! Sunday, day after my birthday, we're doing the Leaf Challenge, but the clocks will have changed. So do check your local time compared to the UK for 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.